Welcome on here down to the table. It is round 3 at Grand Prix Milwaukee. TJ Rogers joined by Eduardo Sajgalik, and we've got Justin Cohen and Wyatt Gibson up on the field.
Yeah, Justin Cohen, famously writer of a thesis on both Amulet Bloom and Lantern Control. Professor Emeritus and Pro Tour finalist.
So it's going to be a turn 1 Fanatical Firebrand there from Wyatt Gibson, and Justin Cohen actually also running a couple of mountains. This is a deck that you're going to be very fond of from Justin. We are running some Arclight Phoenixes.
This is where we want to be, right here. Chart a course, discard Arclight Phoenix. This is what life is all about.
All right, so we've got one in the graveyard. Keep your eyes on that one. It does have some text that when you cast 3 instants or sorceries in the same turn, come combat, that's going to come right back onto the battlefield. It's got some haste, but, oh my goodness, it is the Runaway Steamkin on the battlefield now. It is a lowly 1/1 at the moment, but every single time that Wyatt casts a red spell, that is going to put a +1/+1 counter onto it. When you've got 3 of those counters, you can remove them, and you can actually get red, red, red mana. And that is going to be a really nice way to accelerate.
Yeah, here, if Justin's able to remove this Runaway Steamkin, and then Justin should be quite far ahead, since at that point the Arclight Phoenix would be able to come back, and either Justin can take the front foot and be aggressive, or stay back and block and gain time. Again, the fact that Arclight Phoenix can block is very key in a matchup like this. But here, Justin's setting up and really needing a shock for this Runaway Steamkin. Otherwise, Wyatt is just going to take over this game relatively simply.
It needs both a red source of mana as well as a 1-mana removal spell in order to do that. And that just... Oh, okay, and that's actually going to be the case. That was a Sulphur Falls that entered immediately, tap for red, and a shock eliminates it. So it's Fanatical Firebrand. Tell me a little bit, because we've seen a lot of these blue-red Drake decks, some of them on the much more aggressive side, some a little bit more conservative. They're able to block. They're able to kind of wait until the late game. Where does this one in the hands of Cohen line up for you?
This is one of the decks with a lot more creatures than the average. It plays 6 Drakes along with 4 copies of Goblin Electromancer. So when you see 4 copies of Goblin Electromancer, you could just see there a glimpse of Justin's hand with the Radical Idea. That's where you're going, is Discovery. Dispersal not really being a card you can cast. Radical Idea putting Phoenixes in the graveyard. And Electromancer really powering through the deck. Otherwise, Justin relying on the power of these Drakes. And with 4 toughness, they can actually be pretty key here. However, the Goblin Chainwhirler having first strike plus the Fanatical Firebrand able to deal a point of damage means that on board a Drake would already not be too impactful. Simply able to, since Wyatt would just be able to attack with the Goblin Chainwhirler kind of unimpeded. So here, it's really about how Justin can try to wrestle back control of this board and take over the game afterwards.
All right, and Justin, taking a look at his hand right now, he does know about that Arclight Phoenix. Seems to be a little bit constrained on his resources. When you've got so many of these cards that can trip or push you through, there are a lot of these small little advantages that you can get, but it's going to be Goblin Electromancer, instants and sorceries now cost 1 less, and it is going to be Discovery. And I believe...
He's looking at free cards, which is not what Discovery Dispersal does. It only looks Surveils too.
Yeah.
So the judges are probably going to look into that right now. But yeah, a Goblin Electromancer in a matchup like this, while this gets the result, right?
Sure.
Just to talk. Goblin Electromancer is at its best in matchups where it's hard to remove. The red deck with, which is Lightning, Lightning Strike, and Shock, is not exactly the deck worried about Goblin Electromancer. So Goblin Electromancer has been really good in a field where people had to worry about Jeskai Control or Golgari Midrange, where cheap removal only deals with Wildgrowth Walker. So a lot of the cheap removal that you would have against Goblin Electromancer isn't lining up, so decks were cutting it. Now, after the Pro Tour, though, with so many, white weenie decks on everybody's mind, I think the Goblin Electromancer, while it is a very powerful option, if left unchecked, can take over the game on its own, it is a lot easier for the opposing decks to remove. So it is going to probably lose a bit of value this weekend, just because people are going to be more ready with cards like Cast Down, Deadweight, those type of cards that we're going to see more as the weekend progresses, as people want to be ready for the White Weenie Menace.
So in lieu of the Goblin Electromancer, if you're on that build, how does the deck change if you're not including the Goblin Electromancer?
I mean, even the control decks kind of included, but the idea would be to play a more controlling plan. So something like Lava. You've seen two of those Pro Tour lists that performed amazingly well. Included a lot of copies of Lava Coil and are just trying to control the game and then win with a Drake, kind of down the line. They're more like control combo decks, right? Like you're controlling the board, and at some point you get to get back these Arc-like Phoenixes and take a front foot, right? These decks try to position themselves where you don't need a turn-free Arc-like Phoenix. You just get it back on, say, turn 5 or 6, but there's a much higher chance of getting it with, say, a buddy or two, and that's really key.
All right, and otherwise on the right side of the battlefield, we have got Goblin Chain Roller, and it looks like we're taking a look at the top. There's a radical idea here, but looks like we are getting that resolution there from the judge. He was on the scene and just making sure that everything is going to move forward smoothly, and then we'll be carrying on with the game.
All right, it seems like one of the cards at random, the free cards at random, got shuffled in. And now Justin's resolving that Discovery Dispersal.
Now for Wyatt Gibson, while he is running all of these mountains, it looks to be the mono-red, really hyper-aggressive deck. Actually no stranger to the islands either. Been playing for a couple of years, and from what I hear, big fan of casting Torrential Gearhulk.
Yeah, but Experimental Frenzy is just more card advantage, right?
That's what it's all about. That's why we're in mono-red.
Also, it's essentially Future Sight, right, to a degree. So, and that was a blue card, right? So we're all good to go.
Future Sight wishes it was Experimental Frenzy.
You haven't had a Future Sight in play, have you?
Not for some time. All right, and it looks like we're going to see a Tormenting Voice discarding Radical Idea. That is as an additional cost, and then you draw 2 cards. And this is just going to be a pass back of the turn. So Wyatt Gibson draws card for the turn. We've got Chain Whirler and Fanatical Firebrand, though the 2/2 body of that Electromancer currently standing in the way. But we are going to use that Firebrand in combination with the Enter the Battlefield ability of the Chain Whirler. 1 damage to each creature the opponent controls, as well as the player, the Planeswalkers. Take it down and swing in for 3. So Cohen down to 12. Gibson still at a very nice, lofty and safe 20.
Yeah, and here I think Wyatt's taking a slight advantage here. A Drake from Justin seems to stabilize the board, but a single burn spell, and Wyatt's deck is not shy on running those, is going to lead essentially to, Wyatt being able to take over. It's going to make combat a lot easier, and Justin's just going to have to dig, hoping to find a second Arc-like Phoenix. Since at that point you can double block the Goblin Chain Whirler and hopefully get them back. It's not optimal since a burn spell would work, but then that's a burn spell that you're not receiving to the head. And again, these Arc-Light Phoenixes are kind of coming back, for free, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. It's slowly progressing the game in your favor. But these red decks with Experimental Frenzy are attacking on a very different angle, though.
Looks like an Opt is going to go to the graveyard, but the other card on top coming into the hand, and actually it was 2 copies of Opt sitting at the top of the library. We've got a copy of Shock there.
And its friend, Shock.
Shocking. All right, so we're going to eliminate that, and it's Arclight Phoenix getting aggressive on this one. It hits the battlefield at the beginning of combat. It did see those 3 spells, the Discovery as well as Shock and Shock. Comes in, and it's got haste already. It's got flying. It's going to crash in. Gibson down to 17, but we've got a returning swing from this Chain Whirler, followed up by Viashino Pyromancer, notably a wizard with that 1 red still remaining, and there is a Wizard's Lightning in hand.
Yeah, and Wyatt is pretty far ahead here, I'd say. Essentially, the Arclight Phoenix deck is very good at dealing a lot of damage, but without the copy of Maximize Velocity, that's these control decks, these kind of Arclight, is it decks, or is it Phoenix, is it Drakes? They sometimes run Maximize Velocity for this reason, right? You can't win a race in normal circumstances, so you need that extra push. Something like a Maximize Velocity here, that'd be like 11 damage. But Justin just doesn't have access to that tool, and as a result, it's going to be hard to be able to surmount Wyatt's attacks. And the red deck being able to deal damage with the creatures, that's when it goes ahead. When the red deck doesn't deal damage with the creatures, you're going to fall further and further behind as the red deck, because you then have to just point burn spells at the face and you don't have enough. But if your creatures deal damage, then the red deck gets quite a lot more favored.
Looks like we do have an Enigma Drake as well as an Opt in hand there for Justin, and I think the consideration right now is to play down that X4, which I think would be quite sizable on the current board. Looks like we're getting a count up on that side, but my quick count is somewhere in the realm of, I think, 9. So it would end up being, I think, about a 9-4.
It's actually exactly a 9-4. Since the Goblin Electromancer is not a spell, it would be 10 with this Opt. Yeah, and that's the power of kind of this Izzet deck, right? Is having you have your free mana fret. Early game, blocking, defending, but later on it's just 10 power. It ends the game, in 1 or 2 attacks.
So we're going to see the Opt here. That is going to bring it up to being 10 power on that Enigma Drake, and that is a really nice aspect about it, because on that turn 3, it's a great blocker against these red strategies, and then as the game goes later, it just continually gets better and better. It always seems to have a place at whatever stage of the game it's in.
Exactly. Like in this game, the Drake kind of came late, but if you think about the Drake against something like the Viashino Pyromancer in play, you can easily decide to block the Pyromancer, not at this stage, right, but a little earlier. If it was in play, you could block the Pyromancer, know that your opponent has to combine it with a Shock, Lightning Strike, or Wizard's Lightning, but at that point, you might be taking away their turn free play. So it's still 2 cards for 1, but yeah, here, Wizard's Lightning going to the head.
Cohen's down to 4. With a Viashino Pyromancer and a Goblin Chain Whirler, there's a Fanatical Firebrand, which means that's also 1 point of reach. I think there might be another Viashino Pyromancer as well. That's 3 damage. If Wyatt's got something, any other kind of burn spell, but he's got 3 points of damage in his hand right now that can't even be interacted with.
Yeah, and it seems here like Wyatt is missing 1 spell. I saw a Gitu Lava Runner. Oh, okay. That seems like a Lightning Struck at the back of the hand. So Wyatt is maybe just playing around the card Shock. But yeah, if it's Lightning Strike, the game is over here. I may have misseen it, to be fair.
There's the swing all out. It's going to force Cohen into a position of blocking because this is for 5. You've got both the Arclight Phoenix and the Enigma Drake, but that 2 mana left open has got a lot of potential. We're going to throw the Enigma Drake in front of the Pyromancer, and it's going to be the Arclight Phoenix just getting into chump blocking duty. It's interesting to see the blocks in this order because that does leave the Chain Whirler on the battlefield.
Yeah, but essentially here, Justin doesn't mind this Chain Whirler. It's not important. What Justin's hoping to do here is chain a bunch of spells and just kill Wyatt.
Yeah.
I mean that, like, I thought that Wyatt might have just had it, but now this is the turn. Like, the advantage bar was really in Wyatt's position, but now Justin might be able to string the spells together to get the Phoenix back. But with a Drake in hand and 2 lands, yeah, Wyatt seemed like, until I saw Justin's hand, it was hard to value who was going to take it down. But now that Justin's hand is a bunch of lands and just Drake, we're going to just see Wyatt untap and take this one down, I suspect.
And you can see those 2 Drakes on the battlefield, lots of land in hand. The advantage bar solidly in favor of Gibson here in the first game of this matchup. We are just a little bit shy on actually the spells required to have that Lava Runner attacking with haste. And if that was able to get in with haste, then you would have those 3 attackers, and you could combine that with the Fanatical Firebrand as needed.
Yeah, the advantage bar might have seemed to go back and forth, but that's how the Izzet deck works. Is you're essentially dead to very little, but if you ever get an extra turn, that might be the difference between just taking down the game or not. And here, with the attack with Goblin Chain Whirler, Justin double blocking correctly. Here, to take down the Chain Whirler, Wyatt has to take down a Drake, and that attack with the Goblin Chain Whirler made sense, forcing Justin essentially to block. You could have also attacked with the Viashino Pyromancer here in order to make the Chain Whirler survive, since Justin would have been forced to block each of them. So in a weird way, attacking with the Pyromancer there would have meant that the Chain Whirler is alive. I know that sounds like a weird state of affairs, but yeah.
We have got Experimental Frenzy on the battlefield, the 4 mana enchantment. You can look at the top card. We saw Gibson take a quick peek before passing the turn. But now Gibson is going to be casting cards from the top of the library exclusively, basically, because you can't actually play the cards in your hand. This is always a curious thing. The turn that you untap after Frenzy can just be disastrous for the opponent.
Yeah, and here Justin was hoping to draw a number of spells in order to make this Enigma Drake lethal. Since the graveyard was very stocked, it looks like that Enigma Drake had 10 power, And yeah, a few spells with the Arclight Phoenix might have been enough, but yeah, Justin just always a turn behind here, and going to have to hope that the top of the library is not kind to Wyatt, but that's not usually how that works.
So let's just line up the idea of cards that can deal 3 damage, or 2 damage. But Viashino Pyromancer, Shock, Lightning Strike, Wizard's Lightning. You can also, I guess,
Goblin Chain Whirler plus Fanatical Firebrand, or 2 Fanatical Firebrands.
There's 1 Fanatical Firebrand. We're taking a look at the top card. We're paying 2. What's it going to be?
Lava Coil.
Lava Coil is going to eliminate that Crackling Drake, and that means that you do have access to this Viashino Pyromancer as an attacker. Now we have to see if there's going to be a response. I don't think there is. I think that's still a land, but I don't think Gibson's got it this turn. There's a land. We're not slamming down that card. I got to think. Boy, it's so interesting just seeing playing off the top. There could be anything up there. It's so hard to formulate sort of what this turn is going to look like.
Yeah, Wyatt was basically ahead most of this game and just can't seem to get the cards required to just take over. But interestingly, again, if that Goblin Chain Whirler hadn't been in play, this Drake wouldn't be around. Since, Wyatt at that point could attack with it and Fred in the Firebrand.
Arclight
do
Phoenix.
Force Brand. Block. And Radical Idea. I think here you just start with Radical Idea because, you might as well get the full amount of options.
But if you draw a spell off of this,
Crackling Drake.
You could also jumpstart the Radical Idea, pitching the Arclight Phoenix, and if you can find a 3rd spell on the top of the library, then you would have 2 of the Arclight Phoenixes plus the Enigma Drake.
And that would probably be lethal damage since the Drake was at 10.
You would lose the Radical Idea out of the graveyard.
Yeah, it's still at 10 attack though. So 2 Phoenixes. So yeah, Justin's just going for it.
And the last spell would actually bring it up to being 11 power in combination with the 2 3/2s. That would be exactly enough.
Yeah, Justin would take this down by top decking a spell here, deciding I don't want to play this Drake because I feel that my opponent having access to another Experimental Frenzy turn is going to end up with me losing the game. So I have to take the line, but it seems like it was Steam Vents, and
the idea was there. It's either a spell or it's a land, and then the land means you can play the Drake, but it's a shock land, meaning that it needs to come into play tapped. And there's Lightning Strike on top. Gibson is going to take down game 1. Experimental Frenzy gives him the last push needed to overcome that blue-red Drake deck, and they are going to be heading into the sideboard. Justin Cohen, no stranger to the pressure, though, whatever round it is. I mean, he's played in the finals before. He was in Pro Tour Fate Reforged.
Yeah, and certainly no stranger to extremely complex decks. Again, I think one of the coolest moments with Justin Cohen, and he wrote, I don't remember the number of pages of the Google Doc, but it was 30 or 90. I can't remember. I know that's a wide range. But yeah, on how to play Lantern Control. And I mean like it's a thesis, essentially.
Actually, you know what? I remember that document. Yeah, I went through that one a bit myself when I was playing the deck. So heading into the sideboard here, how are these decks going to be approaching their role in the matchup once they come out of the sideboard?
So essentially, Justin is in a weird position. This is a strange matchup because the Is It Drake's deck, essentially, if you think that the matchup is like from 1 to 10, let's say 1 is the fastest game available to you, and 10 is the slowest game available to you, right? Like 10 almost comes to decking, and 1, 2, 3, 4 punch max, and we're done. The Is It Drake's deck in this matchup is very good at the middle range. Essentially, the red deck, it dominates the early game, like the 1, 2, 3 punch. And then the Phoenix deck can take over kind of in the 4 to 7 range, and that's kind of what we saw. It was very close. It just turned out that with Justin at a low life total, being forced to make certain blocks. It didn't pan out. Wyatt not drawing the burn spell in time. That's why the game prolonged as much as it did. On Wyatt's side, though, the thing is, Experimental Frenzy means that in the very long game, you're not going to take it down. You know, like, Experimental Frenzy means that with the burn spells on top, if the game lasted forever, Justin would end up losing the game. So Justin has to essentially control the early board and then take over in the mid game and try to close out the game before Wyatt gets an unsurmountable advantage from an Experimental Frenzy. And that means that Wyatt's going to bring in things like Lava Coils, Fight with Fires, in order to fight the mid game. Since Wyatt knows that the long game is a good prospect, at that point you want to stop Justin's mid game. So you're going to see both decks go far longer. So you're going to see probably the mono red deck converging from this very aggressive early game deck into this more long game control-ish deck with experimental frenzies and removal. So that's where you're going to maybe see 4 treasure map come in for that reason. Trying to kick a fight with fire and it's a hybrid card, right? On Justin Cohen's side, you're going to see removal come in, stuff like Beacon Bolt. Entrancing Melody is an interesting option as well with Goblin Electromancer, but Goblin Electromancer is a card you might want to card against the red deck, so interesting to see if that comes in. 2 Murmuring Mystic, though, very good against a deck like Mono Red Aggro, difficult to deal with, barring 2 removal spells or a fight with fire, and being able to go wide on the board being key. Not so good against Goblin Chain Whirler, but if they don't, they have to have it every time. Niv Mizzet, though, seems like not a card you would want. But, again, remember that kind of mid-game, late-game? Mm-hmm. If you get to slam down a Niv Mizzet, Perun, the big 5/5 dragon, essentially the mono-red deck, if you control the early game and slam that down, the mono-red deck can't really win the long game anymore. So we might see Justin boarding that in. It's interesting that card might come in, even though we're looking at this as controlling the board early. It's very good against the red deck, so I'm interested to see how Justin is approaching this matchup.
Yeah, and that 5 toughness so relevant when really the only card that can deal with that is Fight with Fire.
Yeah. Or something like Lava Coil plus a Fanatical Firebrand. But even then, like, it allows an advantage. And here, Justin decided to keep the Goblin Electromancer in. It's a lot better on the play since you're forcing your opponent into a play pattern that is unfavorable for them. It's a lot harder for them to slam down a turn 2 play when there's a Goblin Electromancer. And you see that here, right? The Lava Coil. And if you think that your opponent's boarding in a lot of Lava Coils, then the Goblin Electromancer makes sense since you're taxing your opponent's resource. And they're already going to board out potentially some Lightning Strikes. Wizard's Lightning probably stays in because it's so good. But yeah, the free damage effect's not what you want against Enigma Drake and Crackling Drake.
And we saw Gibson with that Fanatical Firebrand continuing to attack in. Interesting little decision point, too. Uses the Lava Coil. There was also the Runaway Steamkin in hand, as well as a G2 Lava Runner. And so I'm kind of hoping to see this kind of 2-turn sequence where you get that Runaway Steamkin at least above that 1/1 level earlier on.
Yeah. The key stat for the Steamkin would be free freeze, since at that point it doesn't just die to shock. Mm-hmm. And any spell would be dangerous for Justin at that point. But yeah, here, I liked Wyatt's take on playing the Lava Coil on Goblin Electromancer. You have to respect the power of that card and disrupting Justin's game plan. And you can see how much Justin respects Experimental Frenzy, boarding in Disdainful Stroke, almost exclusively to deal with Frenzy.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot of those cards that it would be able to take down. Maybe a kick to Fight with Fire. Or actually, no, it's still got that mana cost 3. It's just a kicker, huh?
By the way, the CMC free is a stalwart in the... There was a cool Jeskai control deck that played Sailor of Means, Fight with Fire, and then you expansion it.
Yeah.
So you go Fight with Fire with expansion for the cool 20. But
I'm for it.
Yeah.
I'm for it.
But going back to the game at hand, it seems Justin missed a land drop, which was relatively key to try to take over, and Justin going for this Discovery Dispersal, and with the Lava Coil to deal with the Runaway Steamkin, but all this incidental damage, this Fanatical Firebrand has already dealt a lot of damage, this Lava Runner's going to get in the fray, and that's going to put Justin to a lower life total than Justin would be comfortable at.
So, Justin going to throw down one more land. It's a Sulphur Falls. It's a 2-mana play. It's a Lava Coil, eliminating that. So it's still just the 1/2 and the 1/1. Cohen, while under pressure, is still at a pretty nice 17. He's doing a good job of surviving.
Yeah, but here Wyatt is going to reload the pressure with the Runaway Steamkin. And that's going to be an issue for Justin, since there's not really a clean answer. So Justin's just going to have to likely just cast this Crackling Drake here.
Mm-hmm. And the first Crackling Drake not going to be long for this world because there is that Fight with Fire in the hand of Wyatt Gibson.
Yeah, and at that point, that's a lot of damage coming in. It seems like an extra 5 plus any spell would be would get an extra point because of the Runaway Steamkin. And yeah, Justin here forced to play the Crackling Drake. Essentially here, Wyatt going to be able to answer with Fight with Fire. So next turn, we're going to see another Crackling Drake. And essentially, who's going to be able to be ahead is whether that Crackling Drake gets the stick or not. That's going to be the deciding factor.
There's the 3 mana. It's Fight with Fire. This is actually going to add 2 power to the battlefield, that +1/+1 counter on the Runaway Steamkin, but also that G2 Lava Runner now seeing the 2 spells required in the graveyard. Also, another Fanatical Firebrand hits the battlefield, and a big swing in because you also got another +1/+1 counter. So that is going to be a hit in for 7. Cohen finds himself down to 8.
Yeah, and that that firebrand was really important. It's +2 damage essentially, and it's inherent damage on the battlefield, because Justin will be forced by playing a Drake to block the runaway Steamkin, and then taking the damage, and then Wyatt gets to untap with these firebrands, essentially dealing their damage twice, and then it's going to be relatively trivial. Top deck the burn spell you need to finish the game, and that's why I think Wyatt has the advantage here.
Okay, so that'll be to where, even though it is a 3/3 right now, Cohen is really just forced into respecting the potential of that to become a 4/4.
Yeah, exactly. But oh, and the lava coil off the top, a really key card for Justin here. Maybe allowing Justin to take back control. That was a really good draw. Drake plus lava coil going to be able to act as defense, getting rid of the runaway Steamkin, and controlling this board.
We're going to eliminate the runaway Steamkin and Gitu Lava Runner, and the 2 Fanatical Firebrands are all that is left to try and push through the last 8 points of damage. Crackling Drake with 4 toughness, holding them off. Not certain how large it is this time around. If I'm doing another one of those quick counts, I think it's at the 5 power.
It looks like the Goblin Electromancer is exiled, so it looks like 5. I know Goblin Electromancer doesn't pump it, but there was a card in exile if you were wondering what that was. So yeah, it's 5 power. It's fine. Justin at this point still just wants to take control. But yeah, key Wizard's Lightning. That was a big draw from Wyatt. It allows the Firebrand to take it down and Wyatt to deal 3 more damage to Justin.
Man, and now Cohen's got to find some kind of answer. He needs another creature to get in the way, because that is only 3 damage, but it's 3 damage every turn until something is really ready to actually enter into combat with them.
Yeah, but Justin here has access to a hand full of spells. Just didn't have time to deploy them, right? These Drakes have replaced themselves as cards. So at this point, Justin gets to go through the library and start getting to some Arclight Phoenixes, hopefully.
Opt is going to come down here for Justin, taking a look at the top card with this Scry. So you look at the top, you can either leave it up there or put it to the bottom of the library like he is now, and he is going to draw that one. Really looking for some kind of way to, 5 life. He's hurting right now. He's in a really precarious position, and that Firebrand also offers quite a bit of reach.
Yeah, but here it's still a relatively even game because Justin's looking at a lot of cards. And yeah, this is, having drawn those, Justin's a little cold to almost any top deck from Wyatt. So Wyatt needs to kind of draw a blank here for Justin to have a chance. But that Enigma Drake is 7 power. But I think with the spells that Justin has access to and the life total, Wyatt has a very slight advantage. But it could easily change, right? Justin could easily draw, there's a radical idea in the graveyard. You could easily draw a Phoenix, string together some spells and get ahead. And kill Wyatt in 2 attacks. But I think Wyatt is just very slightly ahead, but the slightest of aheads.
And we do have that Lava Coil in hand for Cohen as well, so once he has the opportunity to untap, he'll be able to eliminate one of these creatures as well.
Yeah, and here, Justin being able to untap.
It's the draw for the turn, and this is going to be a big one. Disdainful Stroke still in hand.
And that's Murmuring Mystic, and that puts the advantage back square in the middle, because Murmuring Mystic gets to choose between Disdainful Stroke or Radical Idea. You essentially get to choose which effect you'd prefer. And because of that, you get to attack with Enigma Drake. And that's the important part. The important part of Murmuring Mystic isn't just that, it's a nice threat to add to the board, is that it's allowing you to attack with this Enigma Drake and potentially take over. And that's exactly why you see Justin potentially attacking here. You see why Justin raised the Enigma Drake, considering the attack. But deciding to go for another plan here.
Now, with that Murmuring Mystic, he is going to have access to okay, so we're going to actually lead on a Lava Coil. Now, there was the option of going Murmuring Mystic, then the Lava Coil. And I wonder if the consideration is just to get the one swinging and then maybe try and play around the Experimental Frenzy off the top.
Yeah, maybe Justin's figuring that it was better to remove the creature and use these spells to go over. We're going to... Oh, it's a Wall of Mist. My apologies.
Not a Murmuring Mystic, so that's the 0/5 wall that's actually going to be getting in the way. It's a much cheaper option.
And here's the Disdainful Stroke.
Yes!
Justin, having it so long, finally finds its target.
No more experimenting for Gibson. He's left with just the Fanatical Firebrand, down to 11 with an Enigma Drake on offense and a wall of mist.
You can just see how quickly these games can swing, right? Just being able to take over so quickly.
Good thing that was only 2 mana, not 4. There's another big swing in, and Gibson is on the edge.
But there's not many cards that Wyatt can draw here. An answer to Drake is very big, but...
Wizard's Lightning.
Yeah, and I mean, you're going to... Justin being exactly at 5, you're going to use up those 2 resources.
It's 5-2 with a wall of mist on the battlefield, and I think Cohen's just shock. Take it down. Game 2 goes to Cohen, and we are going to be heading into Game 3 right down to the wire in that one.
Yeah, I really like how essentially these games have gone down, right? They're so back and forth, and I know it might look weird to look and go like, where's the advantage bar? Why is it going around? It's because each draw step is so critical. The Is It Drake's deck gets to look at so many cards, and the mono red aggro deck just needs like one key card at the right moment to push a ton of damage. So that's why you saw the advantage bar going this way. And yeah, and by the way, Justin being rewarded for that decision to put in Disdainful Stroke.
I was just thinking about that too. You talked earlier, he must really respect the Experimental Frenzy. Absolutely, and it paid off huge in that game.
Yeah. But if you're playing the one Disdainful Stroke to get rid of Experimental Frenzy, that's for tempo. Mm-hmm. There's a view that, you're trying to get rid of Experimental Frenzy, but Wyatt has access to more frenzies than Justin has really answers to a frenzy. But Justin's more than happy for Wyatt to just slam 4 mana, do nothing, and counter it, kind of sucking the turn away from Wyatt.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more while they're in that sideboarding section about what it means to make a play that is tempo as opposed to any other type.
Sure. So the tempo play here is you're trying to take away your opponent's time in the game. So when you're making a tempo play, you might be ahead or behind on cards. That's a consideration. But you're using up a card in order to gain time. So for example, you're spending 1 or 2 mana to get rid of, say, 4 mana. So Disdainful Stroke versus Frenzy is that spending 2 mana to get rid of a 4 mana Fred. At that point, your opponent essentially did not use up their 4 mana. That got sucked away. And it's still a 1-for-1, but you took away their opportunities because the Experimental Frenzy also cascades, right? So by taking away that turn, let's say they had a second one. They have to play the second turn with a Frenzy. But that means that you've already lost a turn of looking at the top of your deck, playing lands, playing spells. And that puts you behind on a longer scale, right? You're not just losing one turn of Frenzy doesn't mean losing just 1-for-1. You're actually losing a lot more because you've missed a land drop, which can mean more mana. So at that point, you're losing actually the equivalent of an exponential amount of cards because those cards compound, right? The first cards off Frenzy are worth way more than the cards down the line because you get mana and more access to spells.
All right, so we're going to jump into Game 3 here. Now, Gibson on this mono-red aggro deck is going to be on the play, and that is exactly where he wants to be.
Yeah. I'm wondering if Justin decides to keep in the Goblin Electromancers. It seems like it's seen on the deck being shuffled. But on the draw, they tend to be a little bit weaker since Wyatt is more capable of deploying a threat and then answering the Electromancer. While the difference between play and draw here is Wyatt had to choose that game, right, between Runaway Steamkin or Lava Quill to answer the Electromancer. Mm-hmm. But on the play, you don't have to make that choice. You can go Runaway Steamkin, and Justin has to respect the Runaway Steamkin. So then the shock from Justin becomes far more important, and Justin's the one that's going to have to answer Wyatt's threats. So we might see a Goblin Electromancer be more of a turn 3 or 4 play, like you play it, but with access to another spell to kind of take over.
Looks like these two players might be liking their 7-card hands as well, so let's kick things off. It's Game 3, and we're going to go right ahead with a Mountain and right back. No turn 1 play from the mono-red aggro deck. It's an island back, and so far just land go.
Yeah.
Couple of lightning strikes in hand.
Yeah, and there's the Runaway Steamkin.
Followed up by an opt there from Justin Cohen. Take a look at the top card. It either goes on top of the library or to the bottom, and then draw a card. Looking at a Mountain right now, but not a whole lot of lands in hand. There was the consideration. Ends up drawing a different card, and then his draw for the turn. It's Sulphur Falls, and there's that Goblin Electromancer. He likes it enough, and it's going to come down on that turn too. Wyatt Gibson, it's just like that last time. Now he didn't need to make that 2-mana consideration. Lightning Strike eliminates it. There's the attack in for 2, but we might be missing a land drop, and we are. No third land for Gibson.
right? But Wyatt has a stock full hand, and you see the difference between the play draw here, being able to have Runaway Steamkin in play, and Justin being forced to draw either a Shock or Shivan Fire, but does in this scenario.
It's always a interesting thing. You see your opponent, they drop down, they miss a land drop, and great, they're missing land drops, but that also just means they've got a handful of spells.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of action where that came from.
Exactly. Shock takes down the Goblin Electromancer. Fanatical Firebrand swings in, but Crackling Drake hits the battlefield that X4, and it's already a 2-4. It beats the Fanatical Firebrand in combat. You don't need a whole lot more from it right now.
Yeah, and Wyatt doesn't have the easy Lava Coil option, so decides here to deploy the board rather than answering the Crackling Drake right now, which would involve a Lightning Strike plus that Firebrand. Prefers to wait a turn just in case you draw a Lava Coil, and being maybe more tempo efficient, right? Wizard's Lightning off the Pyromancer plus the Firebrand would be slightly more mana efficient, and you also have a bigger board, right?
Cards in hand, we've got Lightning Strike, Fight with Fire, Wizard's Lightning, and Experimental Frenzy for Gibson.
Yeah, and the Fight with Fire here, it makes sense to go for the Pyromancer. You're not too worried about the 2-power Drake. There's not going to be there would have been no damage going through. So Wyatt being patient, hoping to draw a land, hoping to draw a Lava Coil, and start pushing through. But Justin's hand, well suited here with a large number of Drakes. And Justin's just going to be able to deploy more and more and more Drakes and take over, I feel, in this scenario.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because they don't really have a high power right now, but that doesn't matter at that stage of the game.
Yeah.
They're doing exactly what they need to do right now, which is stand right in the way.
Right, but with that opt, with that Charter Course, and with another Enigma Drake coming, that is going to be a ton of power on Justin's side very, very quickly. Wyatt missing those land drops means that Justin has a very slight advantage, but it's going to compound very quickly. If this is a Drake that gets an advantage, it's very hard to wrestle it away.
All right, so it's Gibson right now, and judging by how he's evaluating this board right now, I don't think that we're seeing that third land. He's got to make... Oh, actually, I think we do.
But the difference here is that second Drake, right? Last turn, it was just about removing one Drake, but now with two, it's a bigger consideration. And I think here we're likely to see just Wyatt answering the Crackling Drake and hoping next turn to do something like Wizard's Lightning plus the Fanatical Firebrand.
Mm-hmm. Opt there at the end step for Justin Cohen. That's going to make that Crackling Drake grow a little bit. Also has that Enigma Drake in hand. And now, hey, it's just survive until there's 10 spells in the graveyard and attack with both of them.
Yeah. I mean, you can do partial attacks with Justin being at a comfortable 15 life. Mm-hmm. But yeah, 2 Enigma Drakes in hand. This turn is going to be relatively interesting. I think the most likely outcome we're going to see here is Charter Course plus an Enigma Drake. Since, it uses the mana, there is an extra land in hand, but I believe that's the Steam Vents, and any damage is going to matter. Justin does have the option, though, for card advantage here. By attacking, Charter Course doesn't discard a card, and without access to the Phoenixes. The Phoenixes sometimes get boarded up, but yeah, no, Justin taking the 2 damage and just going, let's Drake it up. And maybe Charter Course next turn, every spell multiplied by is essentially a free damage burn spell. Understands that Wyatt doesn't have much mana and decides to pounce.
I mean, with a Radical Idea and a Charter Course, there's not a whole lot required. At any given time, all you need is really 6 spells in the graveyard, and all 3 of these can attack for a lethal amount of damage.
Yeah, but and here, just Charter Course is 2 damage, plus you can draw into more spells, so that could be an extra 9 damage quite easily. Wyatt doesn't have to imagine much going... there's not much is needed on Justin's side to make this a reality. And yeah, here Wyatt going to stay patient with the 2 burn spells. It makes sense. You have to deal with the board before you slam down an Experimental Frenzy.
Yep, there's a Lightning Strike as well as a Wizard's Lightning, so cannot remove 2 of these, but can combine those 2 spells to remove a singular one, or just 1 spell, and the Fanatical Firebrand could also get the job done.
Yeah, exactly. But that's only 1 Drake. That's a lot of damage, and with Justin at 13, I don't see how Wyatt can really deal the necessary damage. And here, even though Justin drew, not much, the Wall of Mist is not going to do enough here. That Charter Course plus the Shock. The Shock doesn't seem like much, but it's plus free damage.
2 damage, maybe remove a creature, or just go to the face. That's 5 damage for 1 mana once it all gets added up.
Yeah, I mean, here, this is going to be a ton of damage coming in from these Drakes.
To Down to 15. Wow, that actually, you would only need 8 spells in the graveyard?
Right now we're at 5 spells. So, Justin's probably not going to kill Wyatt this turn, but Wyatt really has no way to deal 13 damage to Justin. So it doesn't matter whether Justin kills Wyatt this turn or the next. The Drake's deck is likely going to take it down just because Wyatt doesn't have a clean... Even if Wyatt drew an answer to one of the remaining Drakes, there's not really an answer for that last Drake in play. So yeah, and here you see Justin playing Shock. And most likely, if a Shock comes down, then you can... If it hits the Pyromancer, then you know that Justin feels there's still something to be done about board. But if it's hitting Wyatt, then essentially Justin feels that there's no way for Justin to lose.
And with that Wall of Mist joining the battlefield as well, that the Pyromancer basically doesn't exist anymore because there's a big 0-5 wall in the way of it. And Gibson is down to 3, draws an Experimental Frenzy. Let's look off the top. It's Mountain. Can we survive? No! And there's the handshake. Justin Cohen taking this game in 3, or this match in 3 with that blue-red Drake deck, overcoming the mono-red, the Steamkin, the Experimental Frenzy. That was a fantastic game to watch, how those Drakes were coming down.
I think all that matters. That game kind of came down to Wyatt not having the third land drop and not being able to, because if he had access to the Fight with Fire earlier, that would have been compounded damage and might have been able to take over. That Shivan Fire off the top, though, was key. And that was good. But the other 2 games, really back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is going to do it for that match, but we are going to have some more Magic for you in the Time Walk right after this.